Should we work to becoming specialists, or should we opt for the less traditional path, that of the generalist? Hi, I'm Ryan and welcome to day 29 of the 30-day speaking to camera challenge. Can't believe we're almost at the end, but in today's video, the initial idea was to go and redo one of my previous videos. However, I did not necessarily want to get back into that and would prefer to go and explore something new. So that's where we are. Today I wanted to look at the age-old saying of he's a jack of all trades, master of none. And I think quite often the line that we so often miss out is the final one, which really changes the entire framing of that. The saying, as it goes, says he's a jack of all trades, a master of none, but so often better than the master of one. This is where I've chosen to live my life over the past 3 odd decades. In it, I've always approached things from a perspective of, I can learn how to do that. I can take that time to understand it, and at that point, I can either see if a professional is required, or if this is something I can do myself. During that time, I've obviously gained a hell of a lot of skill sets in various different fields, and to me this is so important because there's almost a cross applicability of so many of these skills from one to another. And if we don't go and engage with life in that way, we lose out on so much. We go and narrow our perspectives down to a point where we just lack understanding of anything that's outside this narrow band of existence. If, by contrast, we went and took the time to understand those, it opens up our awareness, opens up our understanding, not just so we can just understand this or get better deals when we have to employ a specialist, but it also opens up so much in terms of the ability to converse and really understand where someone else is at, exactly what their work entails, and actually build those relationships from a point of understanding as opposed to a point of being one step removed from it. I think for me, growing up, I was inspired by this from the works Dune, which in it they basically look at the Mentat handbook, which is basically a handbook for your leaders. It's what you would want and really look for in your political elite. In it they basically look and say something that's required is your Mentat generalist as opposed to a specialist. The specialist is always focused on the commas, the little details here and there, but never looks at the greater picture and never fully has a full comprehensive understanding of it. For me, I really took that on and decided that was the most vital way to live our life in a world that's so dominated by this need to be a specialist. To be the one to say, you've made it if you become a doctor, an accountant, a lawyer. Instead, I think it's important to go and gravitate on the path slightly less traveled, to actually go and say, I can have an understanding of law without necessarily needing to be a lawyer. Yes, I'm never going to practice. Yes, I'm never going to have that comprehensive understanding, but I have sufficient understanding in order to be able to communicate with those professions. I think in my work over the years, I've really seen this, especially in certain fields, whether it be design or IT, where there is that landscape where the person purchasing the goods and the person who is creating them can't necessarily see eye to eye. With this specifically, I'm looking at the realm of app development. In that, we've had times where the directors of the company want something done, but they don't know exactly how to get about it, how to relay that message. With design, I found it quite often to be the same. We work with this series of good designers who are great, but at the same time, for them to fully understand what it is that you're trying to convey or what you're wanting there or the important aspects quite often requires a middleman who can speak both the professional speak as well as utilize the layman's terms and get that dialogue across in such a way that you say, well, both parties are saving their time and can move forward. So for me, that's been very, very important along so many lines if I look at my life. And I think always what it requires is just that willingness to actually go and engage in something that is a little bit uncomfortable. And I think that's it. So often, we're terrified to start anything new just because we don't want to look like an idiot. And I think for so many of us, that prevents us from ever taking action. We go and say, that's something I would like to learn, but I'm probably never going to. It's too hard. I have to go through that stage of embarrassment, that stage of feeling like a child, feeling as though I don't know what I'm doing. And it is uncomfortable. For me, speaking to camera 29 days ago was probably one of the most uncomfortable things I'd ever had to do in my life. And it's me sitting with a random object that somehow had the ability to instill so much fear into me. And I think with so many of us, that's how we live our lives. We stop engaging, we stop trying. We just live within this little circle that's very comfortable. Failing to go and just say, let's go and explore over here. For me, their willingness to say, well, there's a fencing class happening. Let's go try. Gymnastics, why not? Scuba diving, let's go do it. A course on writing, a course on speaking to camera, a course on jiu-jitsu, whatever it is. That a willingness to go and say, let me go and go to lessons for a short while, or just go try it once. I think even trying any hobby once provides you some base understanding, in which case you can take a lot of those topics and utilize them in conversation going forward, which really does help your professional life and your ability to go and communicate with other people, which will change your life as it is. I think there's also one of those where on occasions you try something and it just happens to really captivate you and excite you and brings a whole nother level into it. Whether this be something like I do with archery, I didn't expect to love it quite as much as I did. All I know is that it's something I'd wanted to do for decades, but had never taken the time to do it. And I think for so many of us, that's how we live our lives. It's something that's over there for another time, but we never get there, never ever. And I think on our deathbeds, or at the end of our lives, when we look at it, those will be our biggest regrets, other than obviously the relationships and those type of issues, which I think obviously do tend to cling to our hearts. But with it, the ability to try. Go sailing, see what happens. Go bungee jumping, go abseiling. To me, it's an amazing experience. Spending time in the ocean, scuba diving, snorkeling, doing a cold swim. Quite often, for me at least, and I'm sure this will be for most people, you try these things once and you say, you know what, I'm done, that's definitely not for me. Others work in a very different manner, forever changing your life. For me, if again I look at my relationship with the camera, this is something I would like to carry on with. I think it's a way of me solidifying my own thoughts, really thinking through these topics and issues, and being able to watch it back and see where I was at. And I think for me, if I look at myself now versus in a year's time, being able to look back on this and say, this is what I thought about these subjects, will be hugely valuable. But I think that's digressing and it's going to send me on a different topic entirely. So in this, I think it's important to go and note that for all of us, we should just be willing to try. Willing to say, you know what, I'm not doing anything this Sunday. Let's go try this thing that I've been contemplating for the last however long. Stop waiting 1 year, 2 years, 5 years. Because all you get in the end of it is you get to a point where you just never got around to it. And we all do this. It makes no sense, but we do it. Sometimes, again, lack of time. But quite often, and again, I speak from my own experience here, most of those are just excuses. It's one that it feels too hard. I don't know anyone. Don't want to go alone. What if I don't enjoy it? We pose all these questions, but we don't try. Because really, what's the worst that could happen? It's a terrible experience. You go bowling, not for you, surrounded by old men, or you never know. You might just meet someone magical that changes your life forever. So with that, I'm going to call it there. But you did make it to the end. I thank you for watching. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Have an absolutely spectacular day. Cheers.